You're on a big, like, let's just say it's a canoe of some sort, like a little paddling boat where you have to paddle to get across to the destination. Destination is awesome life. Destination is like the picture that you guys went into the relationship with wanting to have.
Yeah.
Awesome life.
So you're on the same page already,
right?
So, first question is:
First question.
Do you have the same vision of what the future looks like?
Is the destination the same?
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the same place? That's question number one.
Right.
Number two, you're on this boat.
Really good point.
Right? The men are there to do the heavy lifting, right? They're there to paddle, get us across the water, right?
Fight the sharks and the alligators and the pirates.
Get everybody across the water. Is your partner paddling too? Do you want a partner that paddles too?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because this is what will happen. If both partners aren't paddling in the same direction to the same location, there's going to be one partner that's sitting on her ass pointing out all the stress fractures in the boat. There's a bunch of cracks, and they're going to let water come in soon. Hey, there's stress. There's a ton of shit in here. It's going to let water in. Oh, there's water in the boat.
Told you.
Yeah. Right? Well, then let's say you add a couple passengers, some kids, and they have iPads and headphones on and like a bucket of sugar in their lap. Just like not even helping get the water out of the boat.
He's like, fuck it. And just jumps overboard. I'm out. Yeah.
Are you going the same direction? Are you both willing to paddle and get yourselves there? Yeah. If you see, as a female, the stress cracks in the boat, if you see those stress cracks in the boat, are you just pointing them out? Or are you like, hey, like, can we slow down for a second? I think we should patch this up.
Guys, welcome back to another episode of the NK Show. And babe, welcome back.
Hey.
Yeah.
I'm always excited when you ask me to be a part of your life.
When you're like, we need to do a damn podcast. That's how I ask. You telling me we need to do it, and you're not ever wrong.
Well, it's usually because we're getting like a ton of questions.
We're just, there's like a build up of it. And we're like, we really just need to start talking about the stuff that's going on in the world and the things that are, and I really do think there's like this weird thing. I think I told you before, like, it's like, seems like, especially with all my tier 1 clients, when one has a particular issue, it seems like they all have the same issue, right. And it's like all happening at the same time, which inspires my videos and inspires my mentorship calls. But anyways, the one that we were talking about before is I posted I said an unpopular opinion that men often need to hear is that showing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather a strength. Most men discourage expressing emotions or admitting struggles, equating these behaviors with a lack of resilience or toughness. However, being open about your feelings, failures, and fears can lead to a healthier relationships, which I feel like it has with us, better mental health, and more fulfilling life. Embracing vulnerability allows men to connect more deeply with others, seek help when needed, and grow from their experiences, ultimately leading to stronger and more resilient individuals. Thoughts?
So we actually had today core value call outs for Johnny Slicks. Every day that we have like a meeting, a team meeting, we do a core value call out where everybody shares somebody on the team that exemplifies a core value of Johnny Slicks and why they feel that they're exemplifying that. And actually, this particular individual got called out multiple times because they said, everybody was saying he was such an example for all of them in so many ways. And the one that stuck with me the most
was it Brandon?
Brendan.
I was going to say it was either Brandon or Brendan.
Yeah. It was Brendan kept getting called out. Brendan, sorry for embarrassing you by talking about you on the podcast, but he kept getting called out because the guys on the team have seen him set this standard of leadership where he's being really open and vulnerable with them and talking about normal stuff, life stuff, family stuff. And one of the guys said, man, it's like for the first time, I feel like I can share stuff I'm going through and not feel like I'm being gay. And like,
what?
Well, like not to say that that's not an okay thing to say. So I'm sorry that I'm bringing this to attention for the person's listening, but what made me think is like, gosh, it sucks that for men to express their feelings, that means that they're not heterosexual or something. Not that there's anything wrong with being gay, but like that you are somehow less masculine if you share things that you're going through.
Well, that's been the rhetoric, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's been the rhetoric. And you've actually talked about this on other podcasts, which I really appreciated, was your perception of what a man deals with.
Oh my God, yeah.
And anyways.
I
Yeah.
saw it with my dad growing up, but then it really made it super clear for me being with you.
Yeah.
I've been with, so just just to clarify, because everybody's like
Careful how you word this, love.
if people are always asking us marriage questions, and I'm like, I feel like such an imposter syndrome, because I'm like, we were a frigging mess.
You and I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been married 3 times. And so sometimes when people ask me stuff, I'm like, don't ask me. But I feel like that's maybe why they're asking me, is because I've been divorced twice. You know what I mean? This is my 3rd marriage, and they feel like,
Is there going to be a 4th?
they feel like if they can talk to somebody about getting divorced, it's going to be me.
It's gonna
right?
be you,
Growing
yeah.
up in church, all the church kids used to call me because I was the first one to get divorced. You know, my parents were pastors. I was 19 and I got married, and like I was the first kid to get divorced. And so everybody at church was like, "Hey, can I get divorced?"
I can't even imagine having to like navigate that. Yeah.
But I'll say this: I've been with almost, and I said this before, almost every person that I've dated or been with did not have a father in their life. Okay. So whether that's saying something about me or that's saying something about the state of the country, and
Both.
probably both. And so a lot of issues there. And I watched, my ex-husbands deal with a lot of identity issues. And then being with you, I watched you just carry so much. And it made me really realize just everything from finances and business to like jujitsu and weight training. Men just have a separate set of a standard that they have to live by to be seen as, deserving of a man card, or however you want to put that.
And there's no off days.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think about going to jujitsu and I'm like, man, it's just awesome, And I'm like, even when I first started, I just felt like, you know what? Oh, well, like I have no idea what I'm doing. It's fine. But like a man walks into jiu-jitsu for the first time, and if he has no idea what he's doing, everybody kind of sees him as, yeah, okay. Like he has no idea what he's doing. He doesn't know how to fight. Well, that's kind of crazy, right? Like there's a standard there. Men should know how to fight.
Yeah.
Women, it's like, well, whatever, right? There's a standard for like women getting emotional, right? Like there is no standard for women getting emotional. Right. It's like, yeah, she's about to start a period. It's like, whatever. If a
get a pass.
Yeah, get a pass. Yeah. A man doesn't really get a pass. And now, yes, there's lots of guys that are like kind of slobs and they just do whatever and act however and whatever. But nobody sees them as like an upstanding individual, right? That's like a strong man.
Yeah.
My brother posted something, it was a meme, and it said, you never see grown men posting about how they're an independent man because they're doing things like paying their bills and, cleaning up after themselves. It's just being an adult.
You're right.
All the women are like, I'm an independent woman.
Well, this guy, and this kind of goes along the line of the vein of what you're talking about, and I just kind of want to address it because it's kind of shitty that there's this perception out there. So I said what I said, and in the caption I talk more about being the warrior in the garden, like don't mistake being vulnerable for weakness by any means. Like men do have the requirement to have the capacity for violence and have the capacity to protect theirs and their own. But there has to be this lion lamb situation. Like the reality is you only need to be a lion a very small percentage of the time. Majority of the time in your family and behind closed doors, your wife and your kids need you to be more of a lamb, and when you're able to flip that switch, you can. But anyways, he goes, as long as it's with other men like your like-minded masculine brothers, if this is done with your woman, she is bound to lose respect for you. Feminine minds can't handle masculine struggles. And I was like, that's freaking horrible.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I do with my wife, and I have. And when I started to do that more with you, I remember one time we were sitting in the office at home, and you were like trying to pry things out of me, and I didn't break down, but I just like finally was like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. And you were like in tears of like, I had no idea. and like that gave us a little bit more understanding of each other, and like, okay, this is let's do it. Let's be more together. And I said, well, I do this with all the time with my wife, and she doesn't lose respect for me unless you.
No,
you
not
do.
at all. If anything, it makes me feel closer, and it makes me feel like we're more of a team.
Yeah. And that was something, and I want to talk about that more. A little clip that I posted last night. He goes, generally speaking, I think most women will wish for their man to be vulnerable with them, but then later down the road, they use it against them. So whatever they were vulnerable with, they use it against them. You may very well have a woman who is an exception to the general rule, and if that's the case, then a beautiful thing, my man. I'm happy for you. And I was like, then it's the wrong woman. Like I just, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking before is, you know, I tell this to all the Squire kids that go through the Squire program, like the number one thing that will make or break your life is the person you choose as a partner.
Absolutely. And I don't think it's even that cut and dry. I mean, I could see how there could be certain things that, like, you know, I do have a lot of like girlfriends over the years that have like been the person that deals with all the finances for their home, and their husbands have no concept of money. And so when it comes to stuff like that, I can see kind of where he's coming from with that, because if you're like paying all the bills and your husband's out blowing money on bullshit and you're like talking to him
then you
about
guys aren't a team.
Right.
Yeah,
so
like this goes way back to like you guys aren't even a couple anything.
Right. And it goes both ways, right? Like women do the same thing. So it's like I get what he's saying from some aspects, but if you don't have a partner that you can be vulnerable with about things like money or, you know, emotions, then like that's not a partner.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's just that's not your person.
Yeah.
And maybe you guys can get there, but if you don't, you will. This is like, as far as I'm concerned, you're doomed for a life of misery.
Yeah.
Because you're basically alone with this person in your house.
Yeah.
That you have sex with sometimes.
Yeah. I think if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's not a life that I want.
Yeah.
I want to be with a person, and what that video that I was talking about, and this really, you know, and this will be me being vulnerable, but you and I always had initially, I guess in the early stages, we had this kind of, we were both very independent. I think you wanted to become more of a unit before me, and who knows, maybe it's because of my past, because of other traumas, whatever it was. But I always saw us as together, but separate. Like you're a very individual person, which you are. You're very independent. I'm very independent. And so it just seemed like that's the way that it should be. Like we're together, but we're also our own individual people. And then through some plant medicine, which was a hang up for me, really. Right? It felt like if I was being vulnerable with you or giving too much to you, that it would somehow take away from me, and I had it backwards. It was all about, it was the other way around. Like I was leaving things I was leaving opportunity and love and a growth of our relationship. And even before this, we got, like, this was way better. But then I feel like it really unlocked when I unlocked this thought process that we were really just one person. You can get biblical on this if you want, but like we are our own individual thing. But if you look at strands of DNA, you know, half the DNA is little red bubbles, BBs, and the other one's green. You know, so you're green and I'm red, but it actually forms one strand of DNA. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, we are really actually one person.
And you know, I think early on, I kind of fought with you a lot on stuff. Like I wanted to be together. I wanted to be like a team on stuff. And I felt like you just didn't. And I felt like we had the same conversations about it. And it felt like I was kind of hitting like a brick wall because it's like just not where you were at. And you even said to me a few times like that in your previous marriage, you didn't feel like you were ever allowed to have your own thing.
Yeah.
And so you felt like you just wanted to have your own thing. So like I had to just like swallow that and say, okay, this is what he wants. I'm not going to be the person nagging to be a bigger part of your life.
Right.
If that's not what you want, that just won't be my cry. But we got asked, so with those questions that we did a Q&A thing on social media, and one of the questions that somebody sent me, like she actually sent me like a long DM because she is like trying to explain a little context. And one of the things she was asking me was, okay, so what do we do if we're being vulnerable with each other and we're sharing and nothing's changing? I feel like we're having the same conversation. I'm beating a dead horse. He's not hearing me. And of course, I'm not going to leave him. It's not like a deal breaker thing, but it's something that bothers me. And I can't like get through to him. So we've had a lot of those moments. I feel like a lot, especially because we both had so many triggers and traumas from our past, like relationships.
And we, we didn't really meet each other in a great time either.
We were a mess.
Yeah, I mean, we met each other during adolescence, and we had to go through all that together.
We didn't have to, but we did.
Yeah.
Good, bad,
well,
or
I mean,
different.
to get to where we're at today, we had to.
Yeah. And I feel like one thing that I had to do was really try to stop fighting that. When there was something that was like, I was just hitting a brick wall, hitting a, wall with you of what you were willing to change or grow or see. I could talk until I was blue in the face. I could cry. I could share. And if you weren't there to see it, it just wasn't going to change. So the only thing I could do is pray for you, really. And so, like, in the long run, it really did take you doing some plant medicine to, like, have some changes in your heart and in your perspective on things.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say to that person who asked me the question, like, what do I do if feel like I'm nagging now? Right? Like I'm belaboring this point to him. Sometimes it's like, depending on what you're talking about, right? Because it's like, obviously, if it's cheating or if it's like somebody's abusive or something like that, is different.
We're talking about
different. I'm talking about normal
We're not
stuff.
talking about, stage 5, red level, just relationship stuff. Yeah.
No, I'm just talking about relationship stuff and maybe stuff that hurts your feelings and they're just not seeing it the way you see it.
Yeah. Which we don't always see that
right
in the same way. Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to let stuff go and really pray for the person to like understand you in some way. I mean, I feel like that was it. We've been together 10 years. Mm-hmm. October is 10 years. And I feel like we just hit that in this last year.
I mean, we were way better before that.
But I mean, this particular thing that you're talking about.
This particular thing we're talking
about you like bringing me into the picture and not feeling like you had to have your own thing.
Or that you're taking something away.
That I'm taking something away by being a part of what you have going on. Yeah. So like that was
a
big thing for me.
I think that's just a fear. I think it's just like a weird limiting belief or some sort of fear from prior shit that like if I do this, then it takes away from who I am.
Right.
Or my potential.
So if it's like something
which
like
is
that.
I believe is the opposite.
Yeah. So if it's something like that is like an issue that's hurting your feelings or it's something and you want them to see a different way, sometimes it just takes time, like honestly, even just with you and I with like my drinking, and we've talked about this repeatedly. I have a drink occasionally. I'll have a glass of wine here and there, but like nothing like what I did before. I mean, I was drinking like wine every night. I was like drinking way too much over.
Well, to clear it up, we've talked about it on another podcast, but I stopped.
You stopped. I didn't want to stop.
You didn't want to stop.
And
then eventually you made the decision.
And then eventually I made the decision just like, this doesn't have to be part of my life. Right. And so now like we go on a vacation.
I think what you said was, if I want to be with this person, I've got to change this.
Well, it just was like, finally, like this brings me no good results. The return is not here. I don't look the way I want to look. I don't feel the way I want to feel. I'm getting older and I'm looking older and I want that to change. I want to be the best version of myself. So it took me like really going through with you and like hearing your voice and hearing you say it to me. I still needed to process it on my own. You wanted me to stop drinking altogether, like immediately. Mm-hmm. And I needed to go through it and deal with it on my own. And it took me longer. And so like I said, I drink wine here and there, but I don't drink like a ton of alcohol. I don't drink beer, and it's not a part of my life anymore.
Yeah, you don't need it to have a good time.
No.
Yeah.
And that's one of those
things. But that was an escape for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And so same thing with like, people talking to us about their spouses, like in the Agoge, like my spouse won't lose weight. They won't eat right. They don't want to change any habits. They don't want to do any of these things. It's so hard, right?
It sucks, man. It really does. And that we see it all the time where one kind of gets bit by like the growth bug and they're like, oh man, I see a better way for my life. And then so they go all in and they don't necessarily force the other person, but they want that other person to come up with them. And then that's when you start to realize like it sucks because we make these decisions in our lives when we're not healthy, when we're not rooted by, we're not living by our core values. We're not, like when I talk about putting the priorities on the board, that we're not living by our top priorities of our life. So this is the reason why stress and anxiety and depression comes out, because it's your subconscious going, you're not living congruently with the things that matter most to you. And then so that you do, and then you want that person to come up with you, and then they don't, then it causes a lot of friction. Yeah.
And, it can cause a lot of insecurity. It can cause a lot of our demons to kind of come out when we start feeling that sort of pressure from our spouse. Here's one thing I will say, to all the people out there listening, that maybe your spouse is starting to change and grow and you just don't like the way that that makes you feel. Here's the deal, man. Good, bad, or indifferent. Nobody has to stay together. Nobody has to be together. Nobody has to be with you.
No, you're not trapped.
You're not trapped, but the person who's on the receiving end of this, your spouse doesn't have to stay with you. And I know people think that people can feel obligated to stay together with you because of religion or because of kids. The truth is, if worse comes to worse, that person just cannot stand you anymore. The obligations and the religious stuff kind of goes out the window because.
Well, I tell everybody this, you can want it for the other person. You can see the potential in the other person. This is something I always deal with as well. I can see the potential in a human being, but I can't want it more than they want it.
And they're going to resent you if they can't change.
That's funny. Tom was just talking about that. He's like, you can dude, you could be the greatest in the thing if whatever, but you have to be the one to put the work in. I can't want it more for you. And then when you do want it more than they do, and you tell them they have the potential, they end up resenting you because they can't live up to that. Even though there is there, but they're not willing to do the work to get there.
And that kind of came down to that for me. You had grown and changed so much, and I started to realize, I did not want to be dead weight. I did not want to be your dead weight, that you were moving forward in this relationship and growing and getting better, and I was just stuck. I did not want to be the dead weight anymore. I didn't want to be the negative person. I didn't want to be the bitter.
Just to be clear for everybody, it had nothing to do with me. It was your own stuff from your past.
No, you didn't say that to me.
No, but it had nothing to do with our relationship, really. It had nothing to, me growing and then you getting left behind or something. It wasn't my stuff. It was your past stuff that you just hadn't dealt with it yet.
Yep.
And then you had to okay, I got to put all this shit away.
I got to deal with it because this person is going to get sick of me being dead weight. And so in a relationship, if you're the spouse, if you're the woman in a relationship and your spouse is starting to change and they're starting to grow and they're starting to get better and become healthy and fit and happy and all these things, and you just are mad at them for whatever reason because over the years they've been this person and you feel like this change is we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah. And
which happens all the time.
Yeah, and you start to get bitter or jealous.
Resentful.
Resentful. Yeah. You start feeling those things. I'm telling you what, you got to deal with it. If you don't deal with it, you're going to lose that person.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate to say, but it happens every single day. It really does.
Yeah, and I'll let me kind of explain from the man's point of view, because I am intimately involved in a lot of these conversations with our tribe of men, where part of the fourth pillar of the Agoge is tribe, and it really it kind of translates to our why. Why do we work hard on ourselves? Why do we try to better ourselves, become the best men that we can for our people? So the conversations I'm having, these guys are mind blown. They're like, dude, I don't understand why I'm having all these struggles with my spouse, because the spouse is saying X, Y, and Z and becoming insecure about where they're at. And the guy's sitting there going, dude, I'm doing all of this and working on myself so I can be a better husband, so I can be a better father, so I can be a better man to our family. And all I'm getting is shit for it. And it literally is mind boggling to them. They're like, I don't understand but they don't see it that way. I mean, maybe you can see it from talk about it from a woman's perspective of where this insecurity is coming from. But it's always like, oh, you've lost a lot of weight. You look all sexy now. And I'm a fat lady.
Yeah,
you know
and it goes both ways. Sometimes the women do it and the guys.
Sure. But my perspective from the man side, because I work with so many men directly. And to be honest, a couple ladies, a couple of badass women out there that this has happened to them as well.
Yep.
But generally, I work with 99% men, so this is typically the story. And one of the before you talk about their perspective, one of the things that I think that is an issue that I've had to do. It's not fun to do, and I've pushed a lot of men to do, is kind of go to your wife and get knee to knee and say, what are the things that I've done or have done in the past, or I'm doing that, how am I not showing up for you? What's going on here? And kind of open that line of communication of where they're hurt. And typically what's happening is a guy was checked out for so many years, like I was, and doing a bunch of dumb shit, and the spouse was kind of holding the fort down, kind of keeping shit together. And when the guy pulls his head out of his ass, he's like, oh, I'm good, everything's good. But this woman is still holding on to 3 years of bullshit.
Resentment.
And you were too,
Yeah.
like with me. And, like we would get into these arguments where, like, I'm not that, you're like telling me about something, but like, I'm not that person. Like you're talking about somebody who's not me. And so I would get frustrated, and I would have an understanding. I'm like, I don't have any of those thoughts. I'm not doing any of those things. Like, but it's like Dr. Jim Richards talks about, like, people are reacting based off of a trigger or a feeling that they're getting in the moment that has nothing to do with the current moment, but it's a reflection from something happened in the past. So can you talk about, like, the woman's perspective of sitting on that side of like what they're seeing? And
yeah, I mean, so, obviously we all go through stuff in relationships, and especially if you've been together for a really long time, you guys have seen each other good, bad, and ugly, like all the stuff. When we started out, we were both such a mess. So, like, there was just so much that we needed to deal with. And I think the biggest thing that I had to deal with was that everything that you did, everything you put me through, wasn't about me.
No.
Had nothing to do with me.
Not really.
I think
no.
once I could really get a hold of that and just realize, like, it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with you and what you were dealing with and what you needed to work through.
Yeah.
That kind of helped me a lot because, you can carry around a lot of hurt and pain from certain things like that. But, like, that's easier said than done, realizing that's not about you and that the person and the things that they're doing because they are screwed up.
Mm.
And then, really trying to, like, let go of that stuff. My mom told me one time she had this dream about me, and it was, like, really graphic, and so it always kind of stuck with me, but she, like, knew we were struggling. And I try not to talk about our stuff with people. I probably typically bottle things up and then just lash out at you is probably how that goes.
Super fun times.
It's like, I don't want to, like, spread our shit to other people. So then I'll,
especially because of the environment we live in.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'll just yell at him about it until I'm blue in the face. So she knew I was dealing with a lot and I was upset, but she didn't really know everything that was going on. And she had this dream, and she told me about it the next day, and she said, I, like, literally took scissors and cut off the tip of my nose, and there was just, like, blood everywhere. And she, like, heard in the dream, Ali, no, don't cut off your nose to spite your face. And it was like, I started to realize, like, I want this amazing relationship. I want this future picture of us where we're, like, happy and healthy and whole, and we're good parents, and we're getting along good, and we date each other, and we're, all these things. But I am, like, ready to bail at any second because I'm so hurt and angry with you that, like, I will freaking sacrifice this relationship and cut off my nose just to spite you because I'm mad. Like, just, you know what I mean? And, like, that won't get us anywhere.
I was there.
You were there. You felt that. That's exactly probably how you felt. Like, I was just like, I'll cut this fucking thing off right now and bail just to spite you.
Because I'm a tough girl.
Right.
I can handle myself.
Just because I want that picture, but fuck it.
Yeah.
You make me mad. I'll fucking cut it off for both of us. And, like, that's the thing. Like, when you
I think right now we should show a picture of you as a child with your little fist up. You're like,
I do have a lot of baby pictures like this.
Yeah.
Which Dimitri's very good at that face as well. So I think that's the biggest thing is, like, women, want this picture, but you won't let go of the past. Like you
Yeah.
want this picture of the future. You won't let go of the past, and you will hold on to that past, even if it means running your relationship into the ground.
Yeah.
Even if it means cutting off your fucking nose.
And the people, and I think that's a hard time that what people like, a lot of people, I hear it all the time. People don't change. It's not true.
It's not true. People change.
We talked about this before. Like if I would have met the version of me when we met, I'd probably want to kick his ass. I'd be like, dude's a
What a piece of
douchebag.
shit.
Dude's a piece of shit, man. You know? And was I completely, I don't know, I had a good
No,
heart.
you had a great heart, and that's why I fell in love with you. I knew that.
You know? But you're acting like an asshole.
Yeah.
You're acting like an asshole, dude, and you're making dumb decisions and for a lot of different reasons. But, you know, I would not be friends with me.
Right.
If me met myself 10 years ago, we would not be pals.
Right.
We would not be communicating. I'd be like, you got some shit to work on. You go
Like,
figure your
work it,
shit out.
Clear it out.
Clear it out. I'll see you later.
But same. And so that's my first challenge to like the people listening, the women listening or men listening that are going through that is like, how hard are you going to drive that thing into the ground? Are you willing to let like this person to be done and you guys to run this thing into the ground just to spite them rather than have that picture on the other side?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. But then, you know, I had this analogy and I thought I'd share it with you too, because it's like, I feel like it couldn't be a better, I had it on driving to work one morning and I feel like it couldn't be a better actualization of kind of how it feels in a relationship. I listened to a podcast by Jordan Peterson with Chloe Cole. Chloe Cole is a girl that transitioned to a boy at 11 years old.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah. And then
She had a double mastectomy by the time she was 15. And then by the time she was 17, she'd taken all the puberty blockers, all this stuff. And by the time she was 17, she'd already transitioned back. It's like a 3-hour interview. It's incredible. But, you know, it's a lot of him just asking her questions and then breaking down her thoughts and feelings with like psychological perspective.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things that he asked her is, you know, what do you think got you here? Like, how do you think you got to the place of wanting to transition? And I think, you know, a lot of times you see the stuff on the internet of people like wanting to wear makeup and clothes and things like that, little boys, little girls, whatever. But you never really talk about like this adolescent piece of like people going through things in adolescence and not understanding why they feel the way they feel. And so she explained, you know, that she didn't ever feel like connected to little girls, which later he kind of was like, well, you know, she was later diagnosed with autism. And so typically autism makes you be super interested in little things versus relationships with people. So she explained that, like, you know, she was always like interested more in like items and objects and like a little engineer brain. And that probably had something to do with her autism. So she didn't really connect with other little girls. She didn't want to sit and talk with other little girls. She didn't understand that. So she didn't have a lot of girlfriends growing up. And then she said one of the biggest things for her was that, you know, she watched the men and women in her family, and she grew up in like a Hispanic household. And, you know, the women, like the very strong gender roles, the women were cooking and cleaning and taking care of everything, and the men were off doing their thing, working, whatever. And in her particular family, the men, you know, kind of just came and go as they pleased and did what they wanted to do. And the women were holding down the fort and doing all the work and take care of all the kids. And like the men got to go to college and got to play sports and got to go to have great careers. And the women were just like miserable at home. And she saw that and she was like, no, thanks. I don't think so. She said, not only that, all the women in her life just complained constantly.
Yeah.
They were so miserable, and they always talked about how their husbands just ran around and did whatever they wanted, and they had to get stuck with all the hard work of the family.
It's a horrible picture to paint.
Right.
It's not accurate whatsoever.
And so as a little 11-year-old girl, she's like, I don't want this to be my life. I want to go to college.
I don't want to be miserable like
I want to
you.
go to college. I want to play sports. I want to do, you know, all these big things with my career. I don't want to be a girl. That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
You know, and then she goes through puberty and her body changes a little bit, and she starts to realize like she doesn't really look like the other girls who went through puberty. She doesn't have big hips and like a big chest, and she just starts to feel like a frump. So then she feels uncomfortable in her skin. So anyways, she goes through this thing of why she felt the way she felt, and she started having anxiety, and she started having just like a ton of like almost depression at that age.
Yeah.
And very quickly she found on the internet groups of people who said, hey, you're uncomfortable. You don't want to be, you're not happy being the gender you're in. This is what this whole
Switch
world.
it.
She's like opened up the world of transgenderism to her. Okay. So she dug in deep, got involved in all the groups and started, you know, going down that path. Which later she addresses why she wanted out. And she said it was, she never babysat children up to that point. She'd never like, you know, done anything along those lines. She said she was 17 years old and she was watching a documentary at school about breastfeeding and motherhood in her health class. And she said she watched this video talking about how mothers and babies bond and connect with breastfeeding and all that. And this is after she'd already had a double mastectomy. And she said for the first time she like ever even thought about that. Like, oh, I'll never breastfeed a baby. I'll never have that connection with my child. If I do have kids, obviously it's going to be a very different deal. I won't even be able to do that. Well, and then she watched in her childhood development class all these things about the parental unit and motherhood. And it started to make her think about, oh man, maybe I do want a family.
Which I don't want to get down the rabbit hole on it, but there's a whole process of true happiness and fulfillment for women versus men. And a woman will never feel the amount of fulfillment and happiness from that like they do anything else. You can be as successful as you want outside of the home, and you will still feel a lack if you've never had that.
And, you know, it can be, I personally believe, you know, adoption, fostering, whatever. It can still play a role in your life, like the same role, even if you can't physically have children, right?
Yeah.
But she,
because there's that internal instinct, desire that you have to nurture.
Yeah. And she started like babysitting for kids in her family, and she was just like, man, like I want to be a mom.
Yeah.
And it changed things for her, and she just went down the other direction. So, you know, he breaks this all down, and this is what he explained. And this is kind of like where I'll go with the analogy is that women are wired from the moment they start puberty, like cracks off, boom, you got puberty, to have like spidey sense for danger. And that was something that God gave us so that like when you're out, let's say you live in the jungle and you're in the wild, you feel a sense of fear when there is something. Yeah,
you can watch it. You can watch it in animals,
like
bears, ducks,
boom,
chickens,
intense feeling,
cubs, whatever. It doesn't matter.
I gotta protect this baby. So they're
constantly squawking and looking for shit. Yeah,
those emotions and feelings that you feel, like come on as soon as you start puberty. So little 13-year-old boys are like running around pulling on their polywog, having a great time. Enjoying
not realizing
life.
the danger that they're putting themselves into.
Right.
Because they're also designed to go do dangerous shit.
Yes. Yeah. And little girls are having intense feelings of anxiety, danger, fear, fear of the future, depression even, because they don't understand why they feel these negative emotions all the time. He said at the age of 13, there are more little young females that have intense depression and anxiety than any other group. And it comes from that. They switch gears. They go through puberty. That kicks off in their brain. They don't know how to deal with the intensity of it, right? So it comes out in different negative ways. Girls do different things to deal with it. Yeah. But we're wired that way, purposefully. We need to be the ones that are like, hey, we're in danger. I feel it. I sense it. There's something wrong with this situation. It ain't right, right? God created us that way. And then we're like, hey, wake up. Go tell me what's happening in this house, whatever it may be. Well, it's the same way in our relationships, right? We, because of that innate sense, we are also designed to find the stress fractures in any and everything we do to make sure like we're okay. Everything's going to be okay. So we will look for stress fractures, stress cracks in the relationship all the time. We're literally wired to do that. When he said that for the first time, I mean, that like exploded my brain. I stopped being so hard on myself because I was like, I hate being an ag. I hate seeing all this crazy shit I like play out situations in my head of like dangerous scenarios or bad things that could happen all the freaking time. And I feel like I'm crazy. It's like intrusive thoughts,
Which all women have them.
which all women have them. We go
Yeah.
I literally talk to my girlfriends all the time. We literally go to sleep, daydream, like night falling
And then
into
you
sleep
talk to
about,
men like, do you think about this? No.
about like
I like the
people's
meme.
eyes
The meme is
being
talking about.
gouged out.
Yeah, I like the meme that's when talking about like when you ask a man what he's thinking of and he says nothing. Quite literally could be nothing. Yet you try to map a woman's thought process in 10 seconds and it's like 47 different things all happening at the same time.
Especially once you have kids, because it's like suddenly you have such a deep sense of like responsibility and urge to protect and make sure everything's okay and make sure that nothing bad's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So that made me stop being so hard on myself because I thought something was wrong with me. I'm like, I'm super fucked up. Like, I just think about bad shit all the time, especially right after I had Dimitri. It was like all the time. That's all I could think about was like bad things that could happen. And it's very normal. It's part of like our DNA. But what we don't have or what we are missing is that women are not being a sounding board to each other and not helping each other process these things.
Well, the problem is that how many women are on that level to where they even have because what happens is two women get together and if one's not healthy, they just start talking shit back and forth about their husbands.
And that's not what I'm talking about.
That's not what you're talking about. They really need some like because small minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, and great minds talk about ideas. They should be talking about the ideas behind why they are acting, not like talking trash about each other's husbands.
No,
and then firing the other, like you deserve this and you should do this, and that's where it usually goes, and that doesn't help anybody.
No. But what you can do is say to your girlfriend, like, hey man, I am like super freaking overwhelmed. I don't know if I'm doing a good job. I don't know if my relationship's going to be okay, and I'm struggling. And like, I guarantee you they feel the same way. Like,
yeah, I just have a concern. Like, careful who your network is your net worth, because depending on what that feedback is, would show me what kind of friends they are.
Right, and you want to do it obviously with the right people, and that's my whole point. Is like, for this girl, for Chloe Cole, she didn't have one female influence in her life that was like, being a mom is awesome. Taking care of my kids is like awesome. I love it. It's hard. It's really freaking hard, but it's like the number one thing that'll challenge you and help you grow.
Yeah.
And like, I say it to women all the time, especially ones who don't have kids. I'm like, listen, it is so freaking awesome, because I hear women complain all the time. And I'm like, you know what? For me, I have a hard time sometimes. I have a hard time a lot of times, but it is like the best gift I've ever had in my life. And like, for this little girl, Chloe, to not have anyone be like, motherhood is awesome. You want to be a mom. You do. And you don't have to marry an asshole that doesn't help. You can marry somebody that's great and wants to be a part of your kid's life.
So to wrap this thing up, going back to the original kind of conversation about, a couple kind of being vulnerable with each other and having those open lines of communication, not to cause problems, but to cause growth and to get, I don't know how you would say it, like move forward together as a unit. What would your advice to that couple, or at least a woman or a man, to approach that and get the most positive out of it?
Okay, well, imagine this. Imagine you're on a boat. Mm-hmm. You're on a big, like, let's just say it's a canoe of some sort, like a little paddling boat where you have to paddle to get across to the destination. Destination is awesome life. Mm-hmm. Destination is like the picture that you guys went into the relationship with wanting to have. Yeah. Awesome life.
So you're on the same page already.
Right.
So, first question
is, first question.
Do you have the same vision of what the future looks like?
Is the destination the same?
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the same place? That's question number one. Right. Number two, you're on this boat.
That's a really good point.
Right? You're on this boat. Typically, the men are there to do the heavy lifting, right? They're there to paddle, get us across the water, right?
Fight the sharks and the alligators and the pirates.
Get everybody across the water. Is your partner paddling too? Do you want a partner that paddles too? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because this is what will happen. If both partners aren't paddling in the same direction to the same location, there's going to be one partner that's sitting on her ass pointing out all the stress fractures in the boat. There's a
of
bunch of
paddling with them.
cracks, and they're going to let water come in soon. Hey, there's stress. There's a ton of shit in here. It's going to let water in. Oh, there's water in the boat.
Told you.
Told you.
Yeah.
Right? Well, then let's say you add a couple passengers, some kids, and they have iPads and headphones on and like a bucket of sugar in their lap. So now the dad is paddling 2 little droids and a stress fracture pointer outer who's just like not even helping get the water out
He's
of the
like,
boat.
fuck it. And just jumps overboard. I'm out. Yeah.
Are you going the same direction? Are you both willing to paddle and get yourselves there?
Yeah.
If you see, as a female, the stress cracks in the boat, if you see those stress cracks in the boat, are you just pointing them out? Or are you like, hey, like, can we slow down for a second? I think we should patch this up.
Yeah.
Work together, patch it up.
Yeah.
If water gets in, are you helping dumping water out of the boat?
Or you just pointing it
Or
out.
are you just pointing it out?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's nothing sucks more than somebody who's just pointing out fucking the drain holes and just driving water through it. Like, come on, man, get the bucket, help dump it. Let's fix this, right? And then lastly, if you have kids, man, I can't say this enough. Like, get your kids paddling. Your kids need to be paddling. If you want to go somewhere as a family, like your husband can't be the only one that's taking you to this destination. You are on board together.
Yeah.
Teach them how to paddle.
That's it.
That's all.
It's not easy, guys.
No.
But it's fucking worth it. I tell you right now. And we didn't even talk about the sex, what happens with the sex, but we'll get into that on another one.
Get your hormones checked.
Yeah. So, guys, if please share this with your spouse. I know it's a ballsy thing to do, but do it as in coming together. Like, hey, I want to listen to this together, and then I want to open up some dialogue about this. I know it's a big, scary thing to do, but it gets the conversation started. And it's not pointing fingers at anybody because everybody has to take ownership of their own life. But
We're by no means experts.
This is, I would say at this point we are experts because of
What not to do.
Yeah, what not to do. But nonetheless, this is the conversations that we have in the Agoge. So if you're one of those people that's like, you know what, I know I'm meant to be more. I know that I'm stressed, I'm angry, I'm tired, I'm lonely. I'm earning to be more because I know that I have more in the tank, and I have this vision of what my family needs to be and what my relationship with my wife. Like, hit the link below. Let's get you in the Agoge. Start having these conversations and give you the tools that you need to be successful, and we'll go from there. Thanks, babe.
Yeah.
Peace, guys.